The door to Pamshackle One shop creaked loudly. Tamara smiled to herself as she pulled it open, her hand lingering on the metal door handle. She appeared into the darkness within, outside. The world was bright, the sun sat tall and dazzling in its nest of blue. It was like a beacon calling everyone to come out and enjoy its wonderful warmth. The cobbled streets buzzed with people, milling around, busying themselves with shopping families, walked with their children, bags draped over their shoulders and clutched in their hands. Every bag was brimming with large leather BS books, wands and potion bottles. The air outside crackled with excitement inside the shop. It was quiet and peaceful. Stepping over the threshold, Tamara found herself in a small room dimly lit by a single bulb hanging from the ceiling. A thin stream of sunlight filtered in through a circular window. In the door, she waited until her eyes adjusted to the dark room before she let go of the door and allowed it to swing shut. There were two other people already in the store, a tall woman and a little boy about Tomorrow's age. The woman wore a big purple hat whose enormous brim hid almost all of her face. A large white feather poked out of it, and Tamara pushed down the urge to touch it. The boy beside her already had a wand in his hand. He stared at it in awe and stroked its handle gently. They didn't seem to notice Tamora's presence yet, and she stayed quiet in the doorway for a moment. Tamara closed her eyes and inhaled the scent of wood and mothballs, which reminded her of her grandmother's attic. The shop smelled old and dusty with a hint of cedar and resin. Opening her eyes again, she looked more closely at her surroundings. In front of her was a short oak desk, and behind it a red velvet curtain that parted slightly to reveal a long, dark corridor. She could hear someone moving things around on the other side of the curtain. Tamara realized she was holding her breath as she approached the desk. She was finally going to meet Pamshackle. He was something of a legend in her household. He was the person who had sold everyone she knew their wands. Her mother had a Pamshackle wand, as did her grandmother. Excitement buzzed in her stomach. She couldn't believe it here. She was ready to get her very own wand, taking her first step towards her future as a wizard. Tamara's mind flashed with the images of the stories she'd been told ever since she was a little girl. All she had ever wanted was this to be like her family, like her mother to be a great wizard. This was a moment she had dreamed about. She couldn't wait to show her mother the wand Pamshackle helped her choose. When they first left home for the shopping trip today, Tamara had begged her mother to let her go into Pamshackle's alone somehow. It made her feel more grown up when she'd imagined this moment in the past. She was always alone in the shop. This felt like a private time to her, when she and her magic collided and formed an eternal bond. But she didn't mind that the woman and the boy were in the shop too. Now that she was really here, she found the presence of other people comforting and reassuring. Tamara refocused her attention on the desk in front of her and the core all beyond. She suppressed a grin as she reached a shaky hand towards the bell on the desk and let it ring once. Almost immediately she heard what sounded like wood and saw dust pattering to the floor. She glanced around to see if the others had noticed the commotion too, but they were otherwise engaged. The woman's hat was now levitating off her head. Tamara's eyes widened as she watched the boy raising his wand in her direction. He seemed just as surprised to be doing magic as Tamara was to see him do it. Just then, an old man appeared from the hallway behind the velvet curtain. He had wiry hair and thin-rimmed glasses perched atop his nose. Can I help you?" he asked Tamara. His voice was soft and gentle, but seemed to carry the wisdom of ages when he spoke. The little boy fumbled and dropped his wand. Tamara turned just in time to see it roll away from him, across the floor. The woman straightened her hat on her head. She furrowed her eyebrows as she looked down at the little boy, who gazed back up at her shyly and shrugged. Tamara suppressed a giggle and turned back to face Shackle. The skin at the corners of his eyes crinkled with quiet laughter. She imagined he'd seen many young wizards in training drop their wands over the years, though Tamara suspected he already knew who she was. She introduced herself politely. "I'm Tamara Hilwick, sir." She said, "I'm here to find my double." Shackles smiled and placed his hands on the desk in front of him. Then he peered deeply into her eyes. He had a kind face. Tamara decided for a few moments the two of them stood still, gazing at one another. Then Shackle turned and walked back behind the curtain. When he pushed open the fabric, Tamara caught sight of hundreds of wooden boxes. Each was long and thin and painted a different shade. Another Shackle shook his head and, pulling the wand from Tamara's hand, placed it gently back in the box. He carried it through the curtain and slipped it back into the empty spot on the shelf. Tamara tried to refrain from letting out a sigh of relief. She didn't know what her wand would look like, but she knew she didn't want it to be so ordinary. As she waited for Shackle to pick something else out for her, she listened to the quiet conversation behind her. The woman apparently was the boy's aunt. They were waiting for someone to meet them before going on to finish the rest of their shopping. Tamara looked over at the boy. He was excited about the wand he held protectively in his hand. The woman seemed as though she'd been in this shop 1,000 times. Before Tamara wondered how many other nieces and nephews she'd escorted here. She also wondered what it was like when the woman was her own age. The first time she'd come to Pemshackles for her very first wand. Tamara wondered if the woman had felt the same butterflies that were in her own stomach now, or if she came in confidently sure she would be able to find a wand that was right for her. Tamara could feel her butterflies continuing to flutter as Pemshackle turned to face her with another box in his hand. This one was a teal colour. It also wasn't yellow, but hopefully what it held inside would be just the wand for her. She eased it open and Tamara smiled. This wand was beautiful. It had a spiralling tail that reminded her of a mermaid. The tip of the wand was pointed and it was made from a light oak. When she picked it up, she was surprised to feel how delicate it was. But while this wand didn't give her the same wrong feeling as the last one, she thought it was too light and too delicate. It was, though it would break into a million pieces in her hands if she wasn't careful with it. Pemshackle nodded at her once again. She waved it gently through the air for the second time. Absolutely nothing happened. Gingerly, she placed the wand back into its bed of sawdust. Once it was out of her hands, she gave a sigh of relief. She hadn't realized until now just how much she'd been afraid of breaking it. Slowly, she pushed the box across the desk towards Pam. Shackle, his eyes glittered, and he winked at her before turning back to the heavy curtain. Tamara didn't say anything out loud, but she was beginning to wonder if she'd ever find the perfect one. But Pemshackle didn't seem worried. He was patient and kind. As he continued browsing the wooden boxes, she heard him start humming to himself while he absent-mindedly tapped boxes one at a time. Then he turned to face her through the curtain. He asked her to tell him something about herself. Tamara thought about it for a moment. "I love sunflowers," she said quietly. Pemshackle nodded to himself and turned back to the shelves. This time it only took him a few seconds to find the right box, which he sat down on the desk. It was long and thin, with a bright coat of lemon yellow paint. A picture of a leaf was stamped on the lid. Tamara hesitantly stroked the engraving with her finger. The box felt cool and smooth beneath her skin. Something stirred within her as she moved to lift the lid. It was as though her fingertips were magnets, and she was being pulled towards whatever was hidden inside this box. She lifted the lid carefully and felt her heart beat louder, as she discovered what lay within the wand was smooth and made of a dark wood that reminded her of nighttime in her favorite forest. As she looked at it now, she could see the gnarled trunks of the trees she played under. She could feel the rough bark beneath her palms and smell the evening mist on the leaves. She brushed the glossy wood with her fingertips. The wand slipped into her hand with ease and settled into her palm like it had been made just for her. The handle boasted deep engravings that curled around it like vines. Tamara ran a thumb over them. The wand was absolutely perfect. With a twinkle in his eye, Pam Shackle nodded to her. She lifted her hand and gave the wand a slight wave. A river of warmth travelled up her arm like sun-kissed honey. It filled her with a sense of belonging, as though she and this wand were puzzle pieces that fit together perfectly. As the woman, the boy, and Pem Shackle watched, the air around Tamara Sea seemed to come alive. Waves of golden sparkles estuary about her like a shining mist. She beamed with joy, knowing deep in her heart that she had finally found her one. She gripped her wand tightly and grinned at Pam Shackle. He laughed and returned her smile. Watching Tamara reminded the woman in the purple hat of when she got her wand all those years ago, holding it in her hand, had made her feel like the world made sense for the very, very first time she smiled. As the happy memory flickered through her mind, the boy grinned beside her. Holding his wand a little more proudly, they'd both found what they were looking for. Today, a moment later, the golden glow around Tamara subsided. She placed the wand back in the lemon yellow box with care and tucked it under her arm. This was definitely the one she'd be taking home tonight to show to her mother. Hem Shack handed Tamara a soft cloth bag to protect her wand box. She slipped the wood inside and held it close. She thanked Pam Shackle for all his help and then turned and headed for the door as her hand touched the smooth metal handle. She felt a little older than when she'd first entered the shop. Tamara smiled. She was on her way to becoming a wizard. With that thought, she stepped outside and onto the cobbled path leading home.